Today, we're diving into the pretty wild story of how a YouTube star with 500,000 followers, who proudly called herself a witch, decided to completely erase her entire life. It's a journey that goes from fame and fortune to this really deep, profound isolation, all driven by two supernatural encounters that changed absolutely everything.
How dare he do this to me? Does he not know who I am? I'm a witch. Just let that sink in. These are the words of Laura Anel at one of the lowest points in her life, and it sounds like this huge declaration of power, right? But as we're going to see, it actually came from a place of incredible pain.
But here's the thing. That moment wasn't even the beginning of her story. It was a really critical turning point. To really get how she got there, we have to go back and see how her journey into the world of witchcraft actually started in the first place. So, how did it all kick off? Well, what's interesting is that her path into the occult wasn't some deep, spiritual calling. Nope. It started with something a lot more common, looking for answers about a really difficult relationship.
It all began with what she calls a tumultuous situationship. You know the type. She was searching for answers online, and she stumbled across tarot readers on YouTube. She was hooked. So she bought her own deck of cards, discovered she had a real talent for it, and decided to launch her own channel. And that channel, it took off, like really, really fast.
But, as you might guess, this super fast success came with a pretty steep price. While her online career was blowing up, her actual personal life was becoming more and more empty.
And just how popular are we talking? Well, at her absolute peak, the waiting list for a private reading with her was 8 months long. Yeah, people were booking her a year in advance, just hoping they could get a spot. But all that success was hiding a really painful reality. She said it herself. I have money in my bank account, and yet I've never been so lonely in my life. She felt totally alone, completely drained from trying to, in her words, play the role of God for everyone. Now, you'd think this incredible loneliness might push her away from the occult, right? Well, it actually did the exact opposite. It pushed her deeper in. She was searching for a community, so she moved to Australia and just dove headfirst into a world of breathwork ceremonies, women's circles, and all sorts of other practices. And this is where the story takes a really significant turn toward the dark. A series of traumatic, personal events all pile up, leading to a moment that she now describes as the thing that invited a powerful, dark energy right into her life. So here's what happened. Shortly after getting married, she got pregnant. On her wedding night. She says her new husband was absolutely horrified by this and was against the pregnancy. It all came to a head when he kicked her out of their home, leaving her totally alone and terrified. Feeling like she had no other option, she decided to terminate the pregnancy. Now, she describes this whole experience in really harrowing detail, but the spiritual takeaway for her was profound. She started to see it as more than just a medical procedure. She saw it as a blood sacrifice. And that night, she says, something just switched inside her. She felt this surge of dark power. And that internal switch started showing up in her work almost immediately. The pink, sparkly tarot cards, as she called them, were gone. They were replaced with black cards covered in skulls. She started studying deities like Hades and Lucifer, selling potions, and painting pagan symbols on her face for her videos. She even became deeply fascinated with the whole concept of hell. Her life then became defined by two incredibly intense, supernatural encounters. One that absolutely terrified her, and one that, as she tells it, completely saved her. And these two encounters could not have been more different. Polar opposites. The first was this terrifying visit from a being she identified as Baphomet, a horned, goat-headed figure that she says physically assaulted her in a room that felt completely and utterly godless. The second encounter happened months later on a beach. This time, it was a smiling figure in a glowing robe who she says was Jesus, and he brought with him this overwhelming, totally new feeling of being loved. She says that first encounter with Jesus gave her what she calls a new brain, and you can see why. Weeks later, she was hosting a New Age retreat, and she's watching a breathwork ceremony, and she has this shocking realization. She looked at all the people hyperventilating and crying and just thought, this is demonic. This doesn't look like healing. This looks like trauma. Then, about 7 months after that first encounter on the beach, she describes a second vision. This one, way more intense. She says Jesus appeared at the foot of her bed, washed her feet, and placed his bloody hands on hers. And this is the critical part. He then placed his hands on her womb, and in that single moment, she felt completely forgiven for the termination. He showed her her name, Laura Anel, written in a book, and anointed her. She calls this her personal baptism. So, what do you even do after an experience like that? I mean, where do you go from there? Well, for Laura Anel, the answer was to give up absolutely everything she had built. She walked away from a combined social media following of over 500,000 people. Just gone.
She refunded $30,000 in ticket sales for a Bali retreat, the very thing she had once dreamed of hosting. She called it blood money.
And let's be clear, she didn't just rebrand, she erased her past. She deleted her YouTube channel, all of her social media accounts, her website, and without any income, she eventually had to give up her house. It was a conscious choice to start over from absolute zero. So why? Why do all that? Well, she believed that if she was willing to give up the life she had built for herself, he would build a new life with him. And now she has a completely new mission. She feels she was told, I want you to go back to the places you were and bring my children home. Her goal now is to reach other people who feel just as lost, lonely, and empty as she once did. And that really just leaves us with this one fascinating question. Regardless of what you believe, Laura Anel's story kind of forces you to think about what it means to find a conviction so powerful, so all-consuming, that you would willingly erase everything you've ever worked for just to follow it.